Trevor Jones, a well-respected member of the Blaenau Gwent community and a receiver of an MBE for his services to the people of Tredegar. Known affectionately throughout his hometown as Trevor the Milk, he is well known and liked by all. But as of late, Trevor has been wondering about his own family, stories and history. He has been looking at the branches of his family tree to see what he could find, and with the help of the community he has served over so many years, he has turned up quite a lot. So come with us now as we discover the man behind the milk.
Well, I always think half the fun of doing a family tree is putting meat on the bones to have the family stories behind the records that you've found. And you've got a lovely family Bible here. People don't do these anymore, which is a real shame. But how did you come into possession of this one?
Well, it was in someone's house, it had been passed on the family and nobody wanted it. So I acquired it and I've got it, and we put extra things that happened recently in it to complete it.
And are you going to pass it on to your daughter?
Well, do they want it?
It's something like this is...
It is difficult. I mean, I am a bit of a collector, but it's in wonderful condition for its age.
Yes, but more importantly, maybe for a family historian than anything else,
Yeah.
it gives you so many clues to work from.
Yeah.
So,
But yes. But now let's see about my father. He worked with horses all his life. He even worked in the pit with horses.
well, there were a lot of pit ponies around at the time.
Yeah. And his father had 13 children. So he started a hay, corn, straw, cider and a milk business to give all his children an opportunity.
Well, you certainly had a hard-working member of the family there to have 3 jobs all at once.
Yeah, and he got quite popular in the town. What it doesn't say that he was the big leader of choirs, only he had artistic temperaments, so that it didn't last long with each one. He was good at his job, but he took some putting up with, and he had a pronounced stammer, which he used that to effect. But father then went, that's right, he went on the train to Newport to join the army. On the way down, he caught his finger in the carriage door. Somebody in the medical profession could see him bleeding and took him to the army medical place in Newport, where a lady from Tredegar saw him and went and told his mother he'd been wounded. So but he went from there to Aldershot. Then he went to France.
And did he spend much time in France, and what did he do there?
Well, basically in the cavalry. And we have photos of him somewhere with a big sword and goodness knows what. He had all the equipment. Well, I never saw a vicious side on him. Mind you, he did have a hell of a temper. And his son got it off him.
I've never noticed you have a temper. Anyway, perhaps we better move back a generation and start talking a little bit about your grandparents.
Yeah.
I understand from the research that we've done that your grandfather was Thomas Giles Jones, and he was born in Dowlais. Now, can you remember anything about him from when you were small?
Very little. I never knew him, unfortunately. I only had one grandfather, as will be mentioned later, but I never knew him. But I did know that his leg was badly burnt when he was a peddler, and he did walk with a limp. But an artistic temperament, as I said before, even his youngest son, Albert, had to pay somebody to teach him to play the piano because he couldn't stand his father teaching him.
We know that Thomas Giles married Elizabeth Hawkins,
Yes.
and that she came from the area of Langholm near Usk, but she was very, very poor. Now, is there anything that you know about her?
Very little, only I think her mother was a visiting midwife, travelling around farms. It would probably walk or probably on horseback in those days. There was no transport. And when the birth was imminent, she'd stay with the lady, and so the baby was born, everything was all right. She'd move on to another farm, where she had to do the same thing over again.
Well, from the records that we've picked up, the family moved around a lot looking for work, and we have picked up some instances of them actually being on parish relief. So,
But it probably was. I mean, it was a bit of a stigma in those days to be on parish relief. It was a stigma to go to the workhouse or anything like that. But where else?
yes, you didn't have things like the National Health then.
No, it was a struggle. And you made do. There was no food thrown away. It was always boiled up or fried up the next day and things like that. But they did it.
We've also picked up some information on a family tragedy where one of the brothers was left in the charge of his older siblings, actually scalded himself by swallowing boiling water. Now, according to us, he would have been about 2 at that time. And we have another brother that is described as an imbecile on the census. Now, that's very difficult to understand exactly what that means today, because imbecile could be just somebody with mild learning difficulties or just somebody who didn't go to school. But what the concrete information we've got is that the father of Elizabeth Hawkins was buried in St Jerome's Church in Langholm, and that she came to Tredegar to live with her brother while she was pregnant. Her son Percival being born in 1885, which was 2 years before she got married. So we found a little skeleton for you.
Yes, Thomas Giles. Actually, there is a daughter of Percival still living here now. But most of her siblings then moved into the valleys by the 1880s, because I think this thing with the valleys, there was work here. There was no work in the agricultural communities.
And it would have been better paid. So
Would
people
be.
tended to go to where other family was.
Then she married Thomas Giles in Ebervale Nebo Baptist, although both of the couple lived in Tredegar.
Yeah, well, there are a couple of reasons for that. Maybe
Yes.
there was another little
Yes.
skeleton in the closet.
Exactly.
When we do a family history, we do both sides. So
Yeah.
we're going to have a look at your mother's line now.
Yeah.
Now,
But-
this one is really interesting because it was so fascinating to look at what was going on. Gertrude's father was Tim Begley.
Timothy John Beckley, yes.
Now, we've picked up information that he moved to Tredegar from Pembroke Dock.
Yeah.
And there's also some information that he was, to quote, a little feckless,
Oh, yeah.
which I suspect means he had trouble keeping money. He was a watchmaker.
Yes, we found out very recently that he had a son, Fred, and Fred wanted to be apprenticeship. But Timothy John said he had to go down the mine to work to bring money into the house to put food on the table.
But going back a generation from that, Tim's father, we know, came from Ireland and was born in Roscommon.
In 1820. And at the age of 15, he signed on with the Argyll and Sutherland Highlanders in Dublin. So action in the African wars of the 1850s. He appears to have done well in the army and is listed on the 1861 census as living in the barracks in Pembroke Dock with the rank of sergeant,
So
which is quite important in those days.
So he came up in the world a lot.
Yeah.
But then again, the army was a way to A, see the world, B, make some money, and C, sometimes learn a trade.
And have a nice uniform to go with it. There has always been a family story that Timothy Begley was present in the military when Napoleon Bonaparte's body was exhumed in the 1840s from his grave at St. Helena to be brought back to France. Research has proved that his regiment was there, so it is likely that as a young man, Timothy Begley was present for this historic event.
After he left the army, we've picked up another little bit of the story, because in the 1860s he married a young widow, an Arabella Brooker. She was the daughter of David Rees, a clockmaker, which is why we have the clockmaker coming to Tredegar.
Yeah.
Obviously, he learned the trade.
And they're from Narberth, and that is in West Wales somewhere. And they had him for daughters, settled in Pembroke Dock and Staton. And he worked as a toll keeper on the river ferry. Now, there were quite a lot of ferries in those days, no bridges and that, so he was a ferry. And he was in receipt of a pension from the army, and out Chelsea pensioner, which means he didn't live in there. And he just drew his pension, he came home, he died in Liverpool, living with one of his daughters.
So you have got quite a colourful family tree from the information we've managed to gather. And I'm sure there's quite a lot more that we could find.
Don't go looking for any more skeletons, please, Miss Khan.
Well, that's the fun of doing family history. You can always stop whenever somebody wants to, or keep going.
Well, keep going, why not? What have we got to lose?